To solve the mindset problem at scale and help hundreds of millions of people adopt an empowering mindset, he has co-founded the media studio Impact Theory with his business partner and wife, Lisa Bilyeu. Their aim is to influence the cultural subconscious by building a single-minded content creation machine that makes exactly one type of content that empowers people. If Disney created the most magical place on earth, Impact Theory will be creating the most empowering place on earth. Please welcome Tom Bilyeu to the stage.
What's up? All right. Hello. I'm going to ask you guys a series of questions. I want you to make noise based on what your answer is. I will take this is going to inform what this talk is, so please take this seriously. The amount of noise and enthusiasm that you make, I will take as an element, not just the number of people, but how enthusiastic they are. All right, so question number 1, who here wants to live forever? Okay. Who is here that believes that life and death need to exist in a cycle for the safe progress of the human race? Okay, so it's a little split. It's really interesting. So I had gamed out, okay, what talk do you give if everybody is like me and they want to live forever? What talk do you give if people really believe, no, the only right path forward is that people have to die and then the next generation will come up with the new innovations, which there's an amazing quote around that. I think it was Max Planck who said, "Science does not advance one innovation at a time. It advances one funeral at a time." Because we all get locked into the way that we think. And so the third talk is, okay, if you've got an audience that's more or less split, how do we address that? And so that's going to be the talk that we go on right now. They build this as a talk about adaptation. And that really is a core driver to everything that I'm about in life. So to understand how I have come before you, you have to understand what I realized was that in the 90s, it was really debated as to whether or not brain plasticity was real. And if you've ever seen the movie Amadeus, there's a character in the movie Amadeus, his name is Salieri. And Salieri was a real guy in history. He was a contemporary of Mozart. And he, in the movie, laments to God. And he says, "God, why did you make me just good enough to recognize that I'll never be as good of a composer as Mozart? If you had made me terrible, I could be like the masses and I could just enjoy his music. But to be good enough to recognize how brilliant he is only shines a light on my lack of brilliance." And when I heard that quote in that movie at like 18, I stopped in my tracks because I was like, that's my life. I'm just smart enough to know how dumb I really am. And they've actually done studies on this. You can look at people. The people with higher levels of self-delusion score higher on scores of happiness. So this is real. So it was a real, existential dread that I had to live with, that I'll never be smart enough to do the things that I want to do and become. And it really put me down this spiral of I constantly wanted to put myself in smaller and smaller rooms where I was the smartest person there. And so I graduate with a 4-year degree. I go out into the world. I graduate second in my class, by the way. I graduate second in my class. I go out into the world and I start selling video games retail. Now, when I applied for the job, the guy looked at my resume and he's like, "Why are you applying for this job?" And the real answer was that I was applying for that job because I wanted him to ask that question. I wanted to be the smartest person in the room, and the only way to be the smartest person in the room was to put myself in the room with dumber and dumber people. Now, here's the crazy thing. That strategy works. But what you begin to realize is, hold on a second, brain plasticity is actually real. And so one day I decided I'm going to live my life as if this is real. So, hey, if you want to live forever, you need to act as if that's going to be possible. Now, here's the bad news. As of today, for everybody that shouted they want to live forever, yeah, let's go, you're going to die. That is a mathematical certainty as of today. Okay, if science does not continue to progress, the one guarantee I can make you is that you are going to die. Now, for me, growing up, literally until my mid-40s, the thing that got me the most amped in life was the idea that I might live forever. And I acted in accordance. Who here has read Einstein's Dreams? Oh my gosh, you guys are in for a treat. It is a phenomenal book. It's all these short stories about time and the implications of time. And there was one short story in there about a world in which everybody could live forever. And the world bifurcated into two types of people. Type number one never did anything. They never pursued anything. They just laid around because there was always going to be time to do it tomorrow. Then there were people that did everything because every skill you gained would just stack. So you could become a world-class mountaineer. You could become a world-class mathematician. You could become a fighter pilot. Whatever you wanted to do, you could literally just in sequence, one after another, with however much time you needed to throw at it. And understanding that if you want to actually get there, you are going to have to believe that it is possible. You are going to have to do everything you can to get there. You are going to have blind faith that it's possible because what you're trying to do is get to escape velocity. Now, the good thing, the reason that this speech isn't going to be schizophrenic is that these two paths converge. Whether you want to live forever or you just want to live the best life you can, knowing that it's fleeting. And part of the joy is that it doesn't last forever. That it's good for one thing to die away so something else can grow. Regardless of which side you're on, your behaviors are going to be the same. And you're going to be up against the same harsh reality. Now, never did I think that the following statement would be the most controversial thing I would ever say in my life. And it probably won't be in this room, but you guys will get immediately how outside this room, this is controversial, which is crazy to me. Before I make it, let me remind you, whether you want to live forever or you want to live the good life and you want to make sure that you can watch your grandkids, your grandkids grow up, or, because I saw some people with dogs in here, you're my kind of people, if you just want to give the best life to a sequence of animals that you can possibly give for as long as humanly possible, you're going to have to take care of that body. But you all have an enemy. It is a vicious foe. An unrelenting foe. No matter how hardcore you are, no matter how strong you get mentally, this enemy will never give up, it will never relent, and it's the one thing, other than aging itself, that can take you out of the game. And that enemy is your own mind. Now here's the controversial statement. Brace yourselves. You're having a biological experience. You're having a biological experience. You are trapped in your biology. I don't care if you believe you live in a simulation, which mathematically speaking is almost certainly true, or if you believe that there is a God. All that matters is you are subject to the laws of physics. And the way that you have come about is as a biological being. Who here knows who Phineas Gage is? Oh man, you guys are going to love this one. All right, Phineas Gage. This is like the early 1900s, late 1800s maybe. He's working on the railroad. Everybody says, loveliest guy you're ever going to meet. Absolutely amazing guy. Wonderful, wonderful. Everybody wants to be on his team. Hey, all of a sudden, a 3-foot tamping rod shoots up through the man's cheek, up through the top of his head. He never loses consciousness. Did I say it was a 3-foot long tamping rod? That's 3 feet. A 3-foot tamping rod shoots up through his cheek, out the top of his skull. He never loses consciousness, but he does lose, and this is not an error, a teacup of brain matter. And he is never the same again. He becomes belligerent, can't hold a job, nobody wants to be around him, can't stay in a relationship. Everything about his life changed because his biology was altered. Now, divine or not divine, simulation or not simulation, that's the reality of having a biological experience. Now, because I'm one of you, I know what happens between your ears. I know how Oreos can call to you. Oh, baby, do I ever. I know how it is hard to go to the gym. I know that it's difficult to do cold plunging. I know that it is hard to fast. I know that all of the things you're going to have to do in order to get to longevity, escape velocity, they are going to be difficult. And anybody that tries to give you an easy pill, you need to be very skeptical, because there have been a lot of easy pills that have not worked out. There are second and third order consequences that are always hyper dangerous. So you have to be very thoughtful. And so no matter what, the one thing I can promise you is that if you do not get the basics right, you are going to get eaten alive by something I heard somebody else mention, so I know you guys are familiar, the second law of thermodynamics. All things move towards chaos, entropy. Now, what nobody talks about with the second law of thermodynamics, which is the most important part, is it's not a death sentence. There is a thing you can do to override entropy. Anybody know what it is? That'll help. That's a precursor. You have to inject energy into the system. So if you stop breathing, you're going to have a hard time generating ATP. But when I think about, there is a reality to be faced about doing the things you guys want to do. And that reality is that you have to get control of your mind and your emotions. Now, going back to the idea that we are the ultimate adaptation machines, once you understand that you can acknowledge, I'm having a biological experience, there are evolutionary algorithms running in my mind that are compelling me to do certain things, which, by the way, all evolution cares about is that you stay alive long enough to have kids that have kids. That's it. Now, nature only has two really blunt instruments to use to control all of your behaviors to make sure that you will live long enough to have kids that have kids. And those two blunt instruments are pleasure and pain. So if nature wants you to have kids, sex becomes real pleasurable. If nature wants you to avoid sticking your hand in a fire, then the pain of that heat is traumatic. Pleasure and pain. Now, I'm sure you guys have heard this before, but the number one thing that people fear, more than people fear being in a casket, they fear giving the eulogy. They fear public speaking. Why? Because from a historical standpoint, that is something that you should be terrified of. Because if you fall out of favor with the group, if you say something wrong and find yourself on the outside, then all of a sudden, you're starving to death. If you guys are not watching the TV show Alone, I'm telling you right now, start watching that show. It is absolutely fascinating. First of all, I think it answers a lot of questions about diet. Good luck if you're just trying to live off mushrooms. That shit's going to be hard. Now, maybe that will be the most controversial thing that I say today. But looking at that, you really begin to understand what the human animal is like when we don't have all of these comforts around us. And the thing that is really going to be the battle is going to be the battle for your mind to create the level of discipline that you need. Now, the way this breaks down is threefold. You are going to have to get control. You're going to have to pump energy into the system in three very distinct ways. Number one is your beliefs. Number two are your values. And number three are your behaviors. Now, ultimately, the only thing that matters are your behaviors. You could have the worst beliefs of all time, but if you do the right thing, you will get to your destination. Conversely, you could have all the right beliefs, but if you don't have the discipline to actually do the thing, then you won't get where you want to go. You're having a biological experience. I'm going to keep saying that because it is a set of rules. You are playing a game that has rules. Your body works in a certain way. Your brain has an essence. To be a human means a certain thing. And if you fight against that, as they say, you can run, but you will just die tired. And all the time, I hear people attacking this problem from a philosophical standpoint rather than from a physics standpoint. If you can understand how the body works, then you can begin to understand how to manipulate it. That's why the first words out of my mouth when I heard about this new technology is, what's the mechanism of action? What are you actually doing? If you're messing with the myostatin gene, to what end? Because if you're telling me, hey, I want to keep you alive as long as possible, and the thing I'm going to inject you with is designed to downregulate the myostatin gene, then I can go, okay, I know this game. So you're telling me that you want to upregulate muscle. Yes. Okay, if that's true, then you must have the base assumption that the number one problem of aging is sarcopenia. Is that true? Yes. Okay, this is thinking from first principles. This is understanding you're having a biological experience. Biology works in a certain way. If you understand the rules of cause and effect and you actually know how this stuff works, then you can begin doing things that will move you in the right direction. The problem is, I cannot think of a science that is more complicated than human biology. Because of, let me give you one story if you guys haven't seen this study. For decades, heart transplant patients will swear, I'm having memories from the person whose heart is now in my body. What the fuck? How? How is that possible? There is so much that we don't know. Now look, that could all end up being them grappling with something else. It could be the existential dread of having somebody else inside you. Who knows? We will need the studies to come out. But I'm just saying this is an incredibly complicated thing. When I found out that your gut could influence your mood, that you could take the poop literally out of one person and put it in another person, and the rate at which they either added or subtracted body fat would change, like that just seems impossible. Literally 15 years ago, I didn't know that the microbiome existed. And I'm gonna guess that most of the people in this room did not either. And I'm telling you, there are still more vistas like that to explore. So the game becomes, if I'm trying to be high performing as long as I can or actually get to escape velocity, the idea is going to be the same. I have to develop a set of beliefs, a set of values, and a set of behaviors that are actually going to get me there. So what are they? Number one, you are in the grips of nature, which is trying to keep you alive long enough to have kids that have kids. That does not mean it optimizes you for joy. It doesn't optimize you for fulfillment. It doesn't optimize you for connection. But all of the reward and pain is going to be bundled up into that. So there are two beliefs that I want you guys to embody. I have a whole list of 25, but we don't have time to go through them all. The two that I want to talk about right now. Number one, it's what I call the only belief that matters. The only belief that matters, and this is why I say we are the ultimate adaptation machines. The only belief that matters is that if I put time and attention into getting better at something, I will actually get better. I'm fat. Amazing. You don't have to be fat forever. If you put time and attention into figuring out what you have to do to lose that fat, and you do it, you will actually lose that fat. My blood pressure is high. Amazing. If you put time and attention into lowering your blood pressure, you will be able to lower your blood pressure if you can get yourself to do it. The second belief, this one's going to be hard given the existence of Oreos. The second belief is that I only do that which moves me towards my goals. Do and believe that which moves you towards your goals. Now, this is where people get lost. Now, here is one thing that I have a really hard time getting people to do, but this is the superpower in my life. I do not trust my emotions. I think my emotions lie. I think your emotions lie. Or at a minimum, my emotions clearly do not care about my goals. So if my goal is live forever, live the best life I can as long as I can, cool, that's the goal. Now, here's the thing about goals. Goals make demands. You're going to have to do the thing that your goal demands, because I'm going to tell you, you are not going to be able to do the Twinkie diet. I do not care if it fits your macros. You say it all day long. If you eat Twinkies, I promise I will take that bet. You're going to die. It just is what it is. Food are signaling molecules, but we're going to run the tests. By all means, prove me wrong. Because You're having a biological experience. The only thing that you're up against is your mind and the laws of physics. And so if the Twinkie diet somehow is going to move you forward, then that will be something that we can test out, we can prove, and we can do. So at the end of the day, we're only going to do and believe that which moves us towards our goals. So I believe that I can run experiments and see what are the things that keep me physically optimized. What are the things that make me feel better, lower inflammation? What are things that allow me to generate more power, to have higher energy? Whatever it is, whatever those markers are for you that you think point in the right direction, and some of this is going to change over time as we get better science. But if you have the belief that, hey, I can improve on anything at any time, and that I can actually figure out what are the things that move me towards my goals, now you can exist in what I call the physics of progress. Now, the reason I call it the physics of progress is because it has a nature. There is a way to do things. Now, normally I'm asked to speak before business people, and so what I'm about to say usually bangs in that crowd. Here, maybe not so much. But I have built 3 separate companies in 3 wildly divergent industries. All 3 have been multi-million. Quest was a billion-dollar company. I'm telling you, this is a thing that repeats. The physics of progress works no matter what you aim it at. So I went from security software to nutrition and manufacturing, and now into media. And I've been able to use the physics of progress on them all. I used to be 60 pounds heavier than I am now. I used to run cross-country. My legs, my thighs would rub together so ferociously they would bleed by the end of the race. If I put on a pair of spandex, I could actually burn through the spandex where my thighs connected. Okay? Now, once I decided I was going to lose the weight and figured out what one has to do, which is not eat fat-free food. That was my first attempt. Don't do that. It doesn't work. But once I actually figured out what the key was to losing weight, I was able to lose that weight and keep it off. Now, it was 2 battles. Number 1 was informational. Number 2 was my own mind. Because when you're hungry, there's a great quote by a football coach whose name, I think it was Vince Lombardi. He said, "Fatigue makes cowards of us all." Let me tell you about hunger. Hunger will fuck with you in a way nothing else in your life will. Who here has done a 5-day water-only fast? You guys know. You know what I like to do when I'm fasting? And when I say water only, I mean water only. You know when you get those pounding headaches? No Advil, water. I like to go in the kitchen while someone is cooking, hopefully the thing I love the most in the world, and remind my body that I'm in control. And I smell that food, and I feel you can feel your stomach literally knotting up. It wants what's being cooked so badly. But like I said, the foe that you are against is the brain residing between your ears, and you have to get control of your own mind. So I only do and believe that which moves me towards my goals. All right, from a value system perspective, this is critically important. The thing that is going to determine your success is really going to be one thing. How badly do you want it? If you're in this room, you're already in the 5 to 10% just trying to optimize. Right? I don't have to give you a speech about not eating the Twinkies and the donuts and all that stuff. You're not going to be like, "Oh my God, sugar's bad? What?" That's not this audience. However, I'm going to bet that a lot of you struggle with one thing or another. It could be getting up and going to the gym. It could be hanging out with friends and having that connection, which, by the way, is important if you want to live a long time. So building in that discipline is going to be extremely important. But nothing is going to be more high leverage against that discipline than meaning and purpose. When you are doing something hard, whether it's a 5-day water-only fast, whether it's a group workout, whether it's building a company, whether it's raising kids, You will eventually ask the question that I guarantee everyone in this room has asked themselves, probably not once, probably hundreds of times. Why am I doing this? And if the answer that you give yourself in that moment is weak, you will quit. The answer in that moment better be absolutely all-consuming in your soul, because you're having a biological experience. So this is where I introduce you to one of the biggest tricks that evolution ever pulled. It's called fulfillment. You are a social creature. To fail to realize that, you will make bad decisions. You will end up in a dark place. You will not end up where you want to go. You will end up at 65 saying, do I really care? You'll look up at Canada at the people that are getting euthanized, and that will make sense to you. That's crazy. That is somebody who no longer knows why they're alive. I watched my cousin die of cancer. He was young, mid-20s. It was gnarly, man. And in the last few days, watching him gasp for breath, the only time he seemed peaceful was when he was asleep. And you want to talk about somebody, I mean, what did he do to deserve that? He was so young. He was a good kid. It was crazy. But he took every breath because he wanted to be alive. Have you guys heard of the book Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl? It is one of the most important books you could ever read. And he said this, for people that don't know him, Viktor Frankl was in the concentration camps. He actually went through 5 different concentration camps during the Holocaust. And he was a neuroscientist. And so he really understood what was going on. And he said, you could tell when somebody was going to die within 72 hours with 100% accuracy. Because the second they no longer knew why they were suffering, they gave up. And as soon as they gave up mentally, their body would give up and they would die. The game you're playing is a game of your mind. Now, I used to be very mentally weak. My journey has been the journey of going from weak to strong. All of my success is born of that, realizing that selling video games retail was not going to take me where I wanted. And the great irony of my life is, the thing that ended up turning it around for me was shame. So I went to my father-in-law now and asked for his blessing to marry his daughter, and he said no. He said, how are you going to take care of my daughter? And I said, look, I know right now what you see is a broke, out-of-work kid that doesn't know a lot about the world, but I'm telling you, one day I'm going to make your daughter a wealthy woman. And as luck would have it, my mom had this weird thing where at 18, she basically kicked me out of the house. I didn't understand why, because every day after that, she tried to get me to come home. And so around that time, I asked my mom, hey, why kick me out of the house and then try to get me back? It doesn't make sense. And she said, oh, I just always assumed you were going to fail. I was like, damn, like, okay, that's sobering. And then I asked my best friend, hey, my father-in-law doesn't want me to marry his daughter. My mom quietly assumed I was going to fail when I left for college. What did you think? And he was like, oh yeah, I just always assumed you'd marshmallow your way through life. I was like, wow, the people closest to me have accurately identified that I lacked discipline. Entropy. The world is constantly moving towards chaos. And if you're going to be able to rein it back in, you're going to have to pour energy into the system. To do that, you have to have a profound why. And so my why became, this woman has just agreed to marry me. Her father doesn't want us to get married. All kinds of tears ensued. My wife was very traumatized that her dad did not want us to get married. And I thought, I told my now fiance that I'm going to make her rich. I told my father-in-law that I'm going to make her rich one day, but I'm actually laying in bed 4 to 5 hours a day, every day, and I don't have a job. And I let that hurt. And I let that hurt. And I realized I should only do and believe that which moves me towards my goals. And that was when I decided I was going to act as if brain plasticity were real, and I was going to start working every day to get a little bit better. Here's why this matters. Skills have utility. Do you guys know Peter Attia? Okay. He says if you want to live to 100, then you need to be training for that centenarian Olympics. You need to figure out how much muscle, how much strength, how much endurance do I need in my 40s or my 50s or my 60s if I want to be able to play with my grandkids, put my luggage over in the rack on the airplane, et cetera, and then be just a ruthless executor in terms of getting those things done, having the discipline to push that through, understanding that you can get better, understanding that you can improve your body. And I really believe, as an entrepreneur, one of the things that I always tell people is the best thing that you could do to show yourself that you can do anything you set your mind to is transform your body. Because if you don't have control of your body, you do not have control of your mind. And if you don't have control of your mind, you are never going to be able to pour the energy into the system that you need to long enough to actually get to your goal. So you really do have to start with why. Why are you doing this? Why do you care? For me, it became, I'm going to make good on the promise that I have made to my now wife. Now, I want to be clear. It is hysterical because people call my wife a gold digger, not knowing I made that poor girl poor for a decade. So she ends up getting married to me, spends a decade clipping coupons, living in small little with terrible cars. At one point, we only had one car. I mean, just went all in on the being broke angle for a very long time. But I was just stacking skills relentlessly. That's the thing I want people to understand. Humans are the ultimate adaptation machine for a reason. It's not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but rather the most adaptive to change. Humans have become the most dominant apex predator the world has ever seen by a country mile, not by being the smartest, by being the most adaptive. Now, I'm not saying intelligence doesn't matter. It does, and it matters more than I think any of us want it to. But it doesn't matter as much as the ability to adapt. So if you have a reason, if you know why you're doing this, why you want to live that long, why you want to make these sacrifices, be this disciplined, do all the things that you know you will need to do in order to get where you want to go from a physiological standpoint, if you've got that, and then you put the time and energy into actually stacking the skills, there's basically nothing you can't do. I mean, just think about the treatment that they're building here. I was grilling him backstage. I was like, until I see a bead of sweat, I'm going to keep going. Really grilling him because I wanted to understand what is the mechanism of action. And they actually understand it. They know what they're trying to do. Think about that. Think about that. We went from having to learn how to make a fire to being able to manipulate the peptides in your body. Gene editing. It's bananas. Because skills stack. My favorite story about this, and then I want to open it up for questions. I still have time, yeah? I want to open it up for questions because what I want you guys to hit me with, where is your highest anxiety? If anything I've said today, you think that's BS, platitudes, whatever, hit me with the hardest thing, the thing you struggle with the most. Because this stuff is real. The ability to grow and get better is real. The ability to inject energy into a system in order to bend the world to your will is real. And my favorite story is Kobe Bryant. The greatest scouts in the world were paid tons of money to scour the entire globe to find the greatest athletes in the world. and their sole goal was to stop Kobe Bryant from scoring baskets. And yet, in a single game, Kobe scored 81 points by himself. When asked, hey, all these people, they hate you, they're constantly cheering against you, they want to see you lose, they're training day in and day out to bring you down, they boo you left, right, and center. How do you do it? And he just said, boos don't block dunks. Burn what I'm about to say into your nervous system. As you think about living forever, or you think about being a high-performing athlete at the age of 120, you can get so good at something that nobody can stop you. The only thing that's going to stop you is you. Now, the number of times in those 10 years after telling my now father-in-law that I was going to make his daughter rich, that I wanted to quit, the number of emotionally devastating nights, the number of times that a business would fail, the number of times I asked myself, why am I doing this? It all made sense when I was walking him on the floor of Quest Nutrition's production facility. We had 100,000 square feet, machinery everywhere, bars coming off the line like 2 million a day. There was about 1,000 employees at the time I was walking him around. They were coming up thanking me for the job. And I said, Andreas, do you remember asking me how I was going to take care of your daughter? I said, yes. I said, how am I doing? And he just started crying. Because my mom, my best friend, my father-in-law, they weren't wrong about where I was. What they didn't count on is the drive to get to where I wanted to go. And so what I invite you guys to embrace is that in the world of your physical body, you're in complete control of everything you eat, everything you do, every treatment you seek. Ask one simple question: will this help me get to my goal? And if it does, do it. And if it doesn't, don't. Those of you that live by that edict are going to get to some magical places, because the incredible medical breakthroughs that are happening day after day after day, and we're just at the beginning of AI, are absolutely extraordinary. You are living in the most disruptive time in human history. Whether that ends up being good or bad will be entirely up to you. Thank you, guys. All right, now let's do some questions. Who's got the mic? There it is. Anybody have a question?
Hey, Tom, big
Hello.
fan. How are you?
Thank you.
I'm curious how you think like hormones play an impact on belief and mental attitude. And obviously you grew up with a poor mindset. Like, what was that path like to actually like build yourself and get yourself into the positive attitude? Like, do you think hormones play a big part on that? And yeah,
I'll say it in a slightly different way, because I think you're probably over-isolating hormones. So hormones are definitely going to have a big impact, there's no doubt. But I would encourage people to think about things in two ways: cellular energy and psychological energy. So a question I get asked all the time is, how am I able to work as much as I work? So my average week, and this has been true for a decade, is 93 hours. So I did a year of 120. Definitely do not recommend. 1 out of 10, absolutely terrible. But I can sustain that level of work at pushing 50 because I take care of my body, right? Normally when I give this talk to entrepreneurs, I talk about the need for sleep, sunlight, diet, exercise, right? I'm assuming you guys are all up to speed on that. So, but that's cellular. 100%. I focus on my ability to generate cellular energy. And one of the biggest knockbacks in my life ever, I am still shocked that this is true. I had this period of like catastrophic brain fog. And I actually started asking myself, to the psychological part, do I just not care about what I'm doing anymore? Have I lost my why? I was so lethargic. It was insane. And I was like, because I teach. And so I was like, what would I tell a student that came and asked me to describe what I have? Brain fog. I feel like maybe I've lost, how much I care about this. The first thing I would say is, what are you eating a lot of? Stop eating it and see what happens. Bro, I was eating pecans. I cut out pecans. Went away. You guys know what pecans are, right? I was like, what? How is it possible that pecans had this deleterious effect on my overall mood, sense of motivation, ability to think clearly? It was crazy. And kids, these were not like roasted pecans. This was like the plain raw pecans. Anyway, you never know. So what you eat has a huge impact. If you're in an environment that has environmental toxins, huge. Massive, massive, massive. Now, if you want to talk hormones, endocrine disruption, and now I am guessing. This is where I'm like, I'm not a doctor, though I sort of play one on YouTube. I would say I have just deep and abiding fears about microplastics as an endocrine disruptor. Like, if you just look at the data, not in putting those two things together, just the data on like where birth rates are going, where semen quality is going, where... Sorry, what was that? I don't know about the link to cancer, but like a lot of things in terms of masculinity, testosterone levels, that's what I was searching for. So they're all just going in the wrong direction. Now, it could end up being something totally different, but the smoking gun right now feels like microplastics and pesticides. I saw some other hands. Go for it. We're on limited time, so if you got questions, throw them hands up. We got one over there.
I have a daughter who is beautiful, smart, incredibly successful, wealthy, 4 children under 12, and she's a raging alcoholic. Could you address alcoholism to the disease versus, your own body control?
Yeah, so this is phenomenal. So I would definitely be approaching that as a disease above all else. This is going to be a 2-tiered thing. So I have a family just riddled with alcoholics. So I have seen this up close massively. Stage 1 is you have to get them sober. They are never going to be able to find the motivation and the reason to keep going until you get them sober. That's the horrifying part, right? Because a lot of times, every time, they have to be willing, they have to want it. Oftentimes, they're going to need to hit rock bottom in order to do it. They're going to have a similar moment like what I had, where I was like, I'm ashamed. And so now that I'm ashamed, I have a negative emotion that I want to get away from, which is almost certainly what's going on in your daughter's life. And it could just be the buildup of, I've been drinking for so long now, it's the things that I've been doing while drinking that make me feel so badly about myself. But there is a subset of people that respond to alcohol where it becomes it actually makes them more awake, more outgoing, more excited. I'm never going to get addicted to alcohol because it makes me fall asleep, right? So, but a lot of people, they legitimately feel better. And so getting them out of that really brutal spiral of, the very thing that makes me feel better the next day if I have a hangover is drinking more. And by the way, it reduces my anxiety, makes me feel more outgoing, makes life feel lighter and happier. And so they're up against all that. And then if they're also running away from something, now we're going to have to get them sober, teach them to sit in that agony. Great quote, every problem in life stems from man's inability to sit alone in a room. So we're going to have to figure out what's going on there. What is it she's running from? Solve that therapy. And then now, just to give you some straight AA, they say that the only people that are able to be successful a long time find something bigger than themselves, and they help somebody else. So going back to something I said earlier about you're a social creature. You need to make sure that you are serving the group in some way. If you don't have meaning and purpose bigger than yourself, you're never going to get anywhere. So this is extremely complicated. And now, because your daughter's not here, so she's sort of a figment of my imagination, but you're real, I will say the odds of you feeling guilty and like this is your fault border on 100%. So you're also going to need to deal with that. And don't forget that you matter and that you need to take care of you. And that's the only way. And ultimately, if she's not willing to do it, there is nothing you can do other than be there for her when she decides she's ready to make a change. We've got several hands up. I'll let you choose where you want to go.
Thanks for everything so far. My partner and I have been practicing what could be called delusional optimism or pronoia or golden king, everything, just constant positive thoughts. I'm right where I'm supposed to be. Nothing's falling apart. Everything's falling together. Just delusional optimism, constant thoughts of positive stuff. And I wanted to just get your take on if there's a way to improve that or how you feel about that based on a lot of the stuff you just said. It sounds like there's a way to really take that to a next level.
Yeah, so I think that that's better than wallowing in nothing is working and all of that. And any belief that makes me feel expansive, I'm like, okay, that's going to be useful. But remember, you're up against physics. So at some point, you actually have to make this stuff work. This is why I tell people, I never thought that I would teach mindset. All I ever thought I was going to teach was business. But then I found I have to teach the mindset layer so people will stop quitting to get them to actually do the thing. But the reality is, no matter how good your mindset is, if you're not doing the right thing, you're going to be in trouble. So where you want to get to is, this is why I call it the only belief that matters. It's okay if everything's falling apart right now today, because you can run the physics of progress and figure out how am I going to make things better. And I'll give you guys a quick nutshell. I usually save this for entrepreneurs, but the physics of progress has a formula. It is repeatable. It's super easy. It's basically the scientific method recontextualized for goals. So number one, where do you want to go? What is your goal? Number two, what's the obstacle that stands between where you are and where you want to get to? Number three, come up with a hypothesis, literally your best guess. What thing could I do that's going to allow me to overcome that obstacle? Then, hey, shocking, do that thing. And then, but here's where everybody falls down. Everybody, and this is why you can't trust your emotions. You guys lie to yourselves. There's literally something in your brain called the psychological immune system. It's your best friend and your worst enemy. Its job is to keep you from committing suicide. I'm very glad it exists. The bad news is, when you're looking at the data of, are things falling apart, are they falling together, you're going to lie and say they're falling together. And then you're stuck. And now you're just going to tell yourself BS lies, and you'll feel fine because you're constantly saying something that makes you feel expansive. The bad news is you never get momentum in your life. You never go where you actually want to go. And so you, in that moment, need to do a magic trick. In fact, I'm going to tell you something now. It's outside the scope of this thing, but it really is the most important thing I could tell you. What you build your self-esteem around matters. The odds are that each and every one of you is building your self-esteem around being right, being smart, better, faster, stronger. I'm better with my diet than that person. They're a loser. Okay? Those are all very fragile positions. Instead, build your self-esteem around identifying the right answer faster than anybody else. So don't worry about being right. Worry about finding the right answer. So when you run the experiment and a thing happens, look at that data and say, did I actually make meaningful progress to my goal? And if the answer is no, cool, man. It doesn't mean anything bad about you because you build your self-esteem around your willingness to stare nakedly at your inadequacies and figure out what you actually need to do to make real progress. And so now, through that failure, you're going to be a little bit smarter, and you're going to start the process again, and you're going to come up with a new hypothesis that's now more informed from the last failure about what you could do to overcome that obstacle, and you're going to do it. And you're just going to live in that loop forever. And so you don't want to, I hate it when people say toxic positivity. I get what they mean, but you need something that makes you feel like I can do this. Whatever you need to do to get there, amazing. But then just remember, the odds that you will lie to yourself when you assess why something went wrong borders on 100%, so you're never going to talk about anything outside you. You're going to point all 10 fingers back at yourself. You're going to say, I can do something different and get a different result. So I'm going to do a different thing. It's not the economy. It's not that nobody wants people like me to succeed. It is just simply, I have not yet done the thing I need to do to get the result that I want.
This is going to be the last question.
Last question. Let's hope it's a banger.
Well, I'm a psychiatrist, but I like the idea of when you shame someone. When I look back at my life, when I've been shamed, it's motivated me. But it's not usually acceptable to shame people, and of course you have to be, it has to be a shame that's something that you're indeed trying to help someone. But do you have any recommendations in how you would go about actually shaming someone to motivate them? 'Cause
Yes,
it's a tricky thing.
It is. I have some very bad news for you. Changing other people is virtually impossible. And so, for better or worse, all of us, if we haven't already, I promise you, you will at some point, all of us are going to watch somebody that we love live their life in a suboptimal way, die too early, live in pain, come beg you, why am I in pain? You seem to know how to avoid it. Tell me what to do. You tell them they don't do it. You can shame them. You can encourage them. You can browbeat them. It won't matter. Until they get to the point where they are ready, you've got nothing. So what I would say, unless we're talking a marriage, in which case I have an advanced class on how you can use it there, but in your day-to-day life, you have to bring me back for another talk. In your day-to-day life, I would keep the punishment and the rewards internally focused. And then if you have kids, because that's where you can't just accept that, oh, well, like they're just going to go off a cliff, think from a position of rules. So one, in your life, if you love somebody, don't worry so much about telling them. That's a great thing to do, and I love the most, tell them. But the only thing that really matters is, do they feel it internally? When they're closer to you, do they feel better about themselves or worse? If they feel better about themselves when they're near you, you've got a better chance of elevating them. But what I always do, I trap people in their own value system. So if I see somebody and they've got a goal, hey, I want to do this. In fact, I'll use a real example. There's a person in my life who has like every diet-related disease you can imagine. Hashimoto's, diabetes, just on and on. I know what the answer is. I have told this person what the answer is 100 times, but they just aren't going to make that change. So all I can do, I have two choices. One, if I don't want to damage the relationship. One is you can deploy what I call just sit. Just sit with them. Just love them. You don't need them to change. You want them to change. But if you really love them, you have to give them the space to run their life into the ground. I hate that that's true, but that's just the way it works. And then the second is, ask them what they value. What's your goal? Oh, my goal is this. Okay, cool. What have you tried in order to get there? Oh, I've done this, that, but it hasn't worked. Okay, so you've had failed experiments, right? We're walking them into the physics of progress. And where are you falling down? What could we try that's different? What would it mean to you to find something that worked? Now, if they have a really compelling answer as to why they want to do this, which of course I'm going to try to get them to, hey, do you want to do this for your grandkids? What is it that would motivate you? Then it's like, okay, word. Here are the things that we would need to do based on what they're telling you they want. So you're not trying to impose this top down. You're trying to find out what their value system is and then just trap them in it and say, well, you said you wanted this. You said that behavior doesn't get you there, but you're doing it. Now here, oh God, I'm going to get a lot of you in trouble. Here's the advanced class, and then I have to tap out. What you want to do in that moment is figure out what that person would need to do in order to be successful, paint that picture for them in terms of where they could go, and then when they're not doing it, you ask them the silver bullet question that if they don't do anything with this, we're to just sit. And that is, if you know that this is what's going to get you out of this situation, why are you doing the thing that you know causes the pain? Is it possible that you want something other than what you're admitting? Because what people are being steered by is a value that they have not articulated to themselves or to you. So going back to the alcoholic, if she's got trauma, but we're talking about the alcohol, we're never going to resolve it. And so if we can get anybody in that position to say, what I'm really doing is drinking so that I forget my trauma, then we now have that out in the open. And we say, okay, you're using that as a numbing agent to forget your problem. So the most important thing in your life, more important than your children, is to forget that bad thing. Now what happens is, when they go to say that out loud, it's very possible their entire life changes. Because when people actually get to the point where they understand their truest motivation, they're either going to get mad, shut you down, not acknowledge it because it will break their entire worldview, or they're going to have an epiphany. And so the person I was describing in my own life, the true answer for her is she believes she deserves to eat that food. And so she eats it to prove that she's in control and that she's earned it. At least now we know what's driving her. So again, if you can get people to own the truth, now you can work from first principles. As soon as you depart from first principles, you're destined for failure. All right, everybody, thank you so much for inviting me. Good luck on living forever. Good luck on living well until you die. All right, everybody, take care.
Wow, thank you so much, Tom. That was incredibly inspiring. He really made me want to eat an Oreo, but he also really made me want to live till 100, so I'm conflicted. I hope everybody had an amazing time. It's now finally the moment where we're going to be announcing the grand prize winner, graciously provided by Neurohacker. The prize is worth $7,248. It's a one-year supply of the Qualia product. So let's see who the winner is. All right. Is Vincent Nelson here? Vincent Nelson. Oh, there he is. Amazing. So, Vincent, you can come on over to Iza after Dr. Khan speaks, and a shout out to Iza, who's on the team, who helped plan this amazing event. So, there's just a few of us who put this together. Thank you so much, Iza. And it means so much to all of us that you're all here. The planning really started 3 or 4 months ago. It was a big task. If you know Dr. Khan or if you don't know Dr. Khan, what you want to know is he's a visionary. He has big, grand ideas, and you know what? He makes them happen, and we love to work with him. He keeps us on our toes, and I know he was so excited to put this event on for all of you guys, and I just think it was such a cool, interesting group of people in this room. I look forward to putting on events like this in the near future, so thank you again for being here. We really appreciate you. We value you. Do you guys feel like you learned a lot today? That's awesome. Well, here he is, Dr. Khan, with his closing remarks. Thank you.